AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is John Brusk. John is the VP of Data Science at Emburse. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, JP.
So John, let's start with yourself. Can you give a brief background of your journey in tech, where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, taking us up to your current position, leading the data function at Emburse?
Quite unlike maybe a lot of people working in tech today, that's not where my journey started. I actually am an epidemiologist, and my initial work was doing quality of care studies for health plans, ensuring that their member population, regardless of how the physicians were getting paid, were receiving the highest quality of care. And as we accumulated more and more data, more and more physician networks, we needed to scale those analytics. And so, maybe 10 years ago, we got to a point where some of our anomaly detection, algorithms just didn't perform and weren't able to, converge and complete. We would be waiting for 2 days. So I started to learn more about distributed computing, data science, and just being able to scale analytics. And really, data science and big data technologies were the means by which we could, scale what we were already doing and, just make sure that we could do it over billions of rows of data. And over the course of the last 10 years, as you know, the data science field has rapidly expanded, and it's like I never left school. I continue to be a lifelong learner. I've completed certification courses at Cloudera. Coursera has a number of great learning opportunities. And I just feel like I try to make time always to have something that I'm trying to learn more about. And it's really the only way to kind of continually achieve what your goals are, leveraging technology.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and it's great to hear someone who's at that VP leadership level highlight the ongoing training that you're partly required, but also partly based on your appetite to stay on top of what's new and modern and coming down the line. So focusing on your current role, tell us about Emburse, who you are as a business, what you're doing, and most importantly then, what's happening behind the scenes with data science that's driving the business.
Yes. So Emburse is a really exciting organization for a number of reasons. And I guess first I'd like to highlight why I even chose to go into a organization whose goal is to modernize expense management. Really, the need to be able to reimburse efficiently, accurately, securely, and as intended is really extends across many disciplines, whether that's healthcare or corporate expenses. And I found that working in healthcare, as I help to make physician networks more cost effective and identify areas where billing can be optimized, that a lot of those dollars didn't necessarily go back into the healthcare system to provide additional benefits. And so I started looking at other mechanisms by which individuals can just be reimbursed or expenses can be managed without the heavy healthcare organization, kind of 600-pound gorilla that currently exists. Could there be a way that individuals can reimburse their healthcare providers without this health plan kind of sitting in the way, and being able to do that effectively, apply rules and discounts and coverages, et cetera, and minimize that cost and at least make it manageable for people on a monthly basis. So I looked at Emburse, and we just have a wide variety of different technologies that enable companies to reimburse their employees, pay their vendors, and just conduct business so that they don't have to worry about making sure that, the reimbursement's being, done accurately. They're just doing what their company was meant to do. And, I started thinking about, well, could there be other things that this could be used for? We have card systems that enable people to create virtual cards and be able to make on the, point of service payments with resources that they didn't have 5 minutes previously. And so I started seeing that maybe there could be a way to get the expense management more in the healthcare space as well, so that companies could not only manage their corporate expenses, but manage their healthcare expenses more cost effectively and possibly, enable them to be self-insured and save additional money. So I found Emburse very attractive because of that, and the corporate culture, always wanting to innovate and identify ways that we can essentially humanize work. And the values really attracted me. Our values of See It, which is sincerity, empathy, empowerment, individuality, and teamwork. And everyone here really is looking at all of the small problems that people have with conducting business and trying to work together to solve those. And I think, my passion is trying to find innovations in healthcare, but I'm finding that by working with expenses and helping companies manage those, that we're finding ways to extend that. Ways to show that, that seat rest or the back support that you bought for your home office, we can optimize how that gets paid for. We can provide additional benefits to employees to kind of provide this 360 ability to make their work better, not only, making them more efficient at what they do, but also more comfortable and, just all in all, just, having a better work environment, especially as we're kind of all stuck at home. But we see that changing as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful overview, and I think it helps frame the industry quite well. And from previous conversations you and I had, I was pleasantly surprised at how much money and investment is going into this space, this technology, to try and improve the overall experience for companies who are supporting employees, but also how it can impact the individual employee. So focusing now on the data science behind all of this, your role as the VP has evolved since joining, and there's been rapid growth. But can you give us some insight into what it's like to be part of your group? The current makeup, the typical day in the life, some of the projects that you're working on, and what's driving the data science behind all of this?
Sure. Really, the data science follows kind of our objectives is where are the ways that we can help to solve tedious problems, things that are repetitive and can potentially be automated. One of the things that we want to make sure with the use of data science is that we're not taking the human out of the equation. We're augmenting their ability to make the right decisions. And so that's where we're positioning data science and machine learning throughout our company. We have several objectives, and the first one really is, how do we augment the ability to decide when a human needs to actually spend time reviewing and validating an expense report, for example. And so obviously large organizations have thousands and thousands of expense reports. They can't or don't want to spend the money to review everything. So, but we don't want to take the humans out of the equation. We want to be able to give them a dashboard of, okay, here's what's going on. Here are different issues that may be occurring in your expenses, and give them the kind of visualization of where they should spend their time. Okay, look, we've got some potential issues on these types of tendencies of, some of the things that have been identified in the marketplace, especially in the last year, are, for example, mileage usage. Mileage expenses have skyrocketed over the last year because if you're going to get around, most of the time people are doing it via ground transportation. And, Deloitte has recently published information about how mileage expenses can be padded by as much as 30%. So being able to identify those patterns and, triangulate that with, what are the other expenses? Where was that individual during this, trip or this leg? And being able to come up with the right context and I score that so that, hey, this is something that needs to be reviewed, but these other things can fly by without, any issue. So being able to kind of augment individuals with the power to know which expenses need critical review is one of those things. The other objective is really to be able to have more intelligence in how we bring in data. So as we bring in data, it comes in through card transactions. It comes in through people emailing us receipts or taking a photo and, uploading it. We may get, just a variety of different signals, and all of that has to come together for us to be able to structure the data appropriately. So, image data comes in. There's certain information I want to get, but I want to be able to also not lose the information. A good example is, looking at gift card purchases. A lot of companies want to make sure that when your employees are purchasing gift cards, that was for appropriate intended purpose. And so a lot of times, there's keyword functionality with a lot of expense software. And they're pretty, I don't want to call them naive, but essentially it's a dictionary that if the keyword exists anywhere in the OCR receipt or in the business purpose or any other description or text information on the expense, that it's flagged. But, that's a fairly simplistic approach. And even though we've been doing that for 10 years, we want to empower humans to be able to know, well, if the keyword exists, is it what I expect, right? So common keywords might be beer, right? And so every time beer shows up in expense, do you want to have to review that? Shouldn't we be able to train a model to know the context of how that is being expressed, whether it's a line item or whether it's a beer battered entree, right? So there's a number of ways that we can provide additional insight in just in how we're bringing in that data, how we're tagging it and adding that context that enables our customers to then be able to decide, okay, I don't need to review that, or yes, I do because this is a keyword beer and I know that there was alcohol purchased. So those are two of the things we're currently trying to inject data science in, is to be able to help the process of reviewing and allocating the expenses and doing that validation and just providing those people with the additional insights of, when something is invoking a rule, is it something that I need to worry about? Because there tends to be a very high false positive rate when people configure expense software and they want to catch different things and they create rules. There's a very high false positivity rate, and it tends to bog down payment. It overburdens finance teams, and it just provides a lot of unnecessary work.
You and I spoke previously about the growth that Emburse was experiencing even throughout the pandemic, and more recently, you guys have had some major announcements that have further bolstered Emburse as a business that will drive the data group forward at a much faster pace. Can you give us some insight into those recent changes and then help us visualize what the rest of 2021 is going to look like for you and your group?
Yeah, so Emburse actually, and I mentioned we've been doing things for 10 years. Emburse has only been around for about a year as an organization, but it brought together about 10 different organizations that had expense products, which are all now different products in our portfolio. And they're all kind of geared towards different levels in the market, whether you're an enterprise organization or a small to mid-market business. So given that, we had this decision of, okay, how do we move forward with these companies and leverage all of the information and data and experience across them without changing who they were and the functions they performed and the customers they served in the way they did it. So Emburse really is a analytics and data science platform company that enables us to bring all of these organizations together through a very simple process of syncing all of their data. We literally use a stack that's Fivetran and Snowflake, where all of the individual backend databases are synced every, depending, 15 minutes to an hour into a centralized Snowflake database. And we have different instances because we do have EU and Canadian and other countries that we need to keep the data separated. But we're addressing that with some of our data anonymization and normalization processes. But essentially, we brought all this data together. And now this enables us to look across and bring all of this experience together to build better models, identify other context, be able to create better vendor indexes. And it's really quite powerful because now all of this data is in one place. Our customers are able to now benefit from that because we're providing an analytics platform that enables them to utilize that data. They can access their data as they know it, as well as other information that can assist them in better managing their expenses. And this kind of platform enables us to provide innovations and enhancements back to the different products or business units without getting into their DevOps and development and IT operations. We're building this service architecture where business units can decide to integrate when they feel is appropriate and how. So, for example, I mentioned that audit service. It's essentially a microservice where a business unit decides, okay, here in my routing, I'm going to have an API call to this service, send them a payload, get back a response that will help decide how to route this expense. And they can all integrate with it and don't have to incorporate that into their core architecture. And we plan on plugging in additional services so that all along the way of the expense journey, they can call us and get insights into how to manage the workflow of that expense. And so by doing that, regardless of how many additional products we add or maybe additional acquisitions, we can provide those services across all of them, and they can decide how and when to integrate.
So, John, thank you for that insight into what's in store for the business. The final question from me then is looking at the growth. What types of people are you going to need to bring in specifically on the data team, and what are you going to be looking for as you hire?
Yeah, great question. And it's really somewhat different than I expected because I was, really somewhat naive with all the different data available, and we brought in lots of different SaaS systems data, all different schemas. And I thought, I need business analysts and I need data scientists to start, stitching this stuff together and understanding it. But I'm finding that more and more as we get and accumulate all of this data from the business units, that data engineering is becoming a huge bottleneck for us. And we need to hire more data engineers to basically transform and normalize and get all of those schemas into a common data model. And it's like a huge task. Across our business units, we have over 12,000 database tables. Obviously we don't need all of those, and we definitely don't want to try to normalize all of it. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to design what that looks like and what is that minimum viable common data model that will support most of our objectives over the next year, such as audit and these other services. I find it very difficult to find data engineers, and a data engineer could be so many different things, right? And the technologies that we're using really somewhat make it easy to move the data around. It's more about understanding how to logically map and ensure that you're not losing the meaning of that. You've got rigorous systems that are able to identify the incremental changes, update, snapshot where needed, and have the right architecture so that where you have that common data model, you also have all of the information necessary to have that lineage and provenance of the data, so that we're not making mistakes along the way and generalizing data into something that obviously doesn't reflect the raw data and what it was intended. I think there's a big opportunity at Emburse. We're looking to hire data engineers and architects to help us manage this. We've just acquired a couple of additional companies that are more on the analytics side. So we manage the expenses for companies internally. We want to get more into analytics, and there's two companies that are on the forefront of providing travel analytics that we've brought in, and they have a wealth of information, and we need to integrate and also expand kind of our understanding of what are the important data elements and incorporate those into our common data model. So just a lot of work to get the data to the point where we can start to really accelerate and provide additional data products and innovations to our customers.
John, it sounds fascinating, and clearly from the growth that Emburse is going through over the past 12 months and the signs that more organizations are now moving towards this automated approach to expense management, you're going to have a lot of work to do, and I know the team is growing, and it all sounds exciting. So we wish you and everyone at Emburse all the best. We appreciate you coming on today, talking to us, and we look forward to seeing what you guys can accomplish in the year ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.